Hi, my name is Owen and I'm the photographic technician at West Kent College. In this video we're going to take a second look at image sizing, concentrating this time on using the crop tool to resize. And you can use the crop tool not just to shrink things down, but also to actually increase the size of your file, which a lot of people don't realise. So here we go. So this is an image taken with an iPhone, and before we start with the crop tool, it's worth a quick look at the image size. You'll see the overall size is 61 megapixels, and that's made up of 5788 by 3683 pixels. The resolution is 240 pixels per inch. I'll close that for the moment and go to the crop tool, which you'll find here in the toolbar. So if you just select the crop tool, then click, hold and drag a handle on a corner or a side of your image, you can crop your photo to any rectangular shape. If you have a newer version of Photoshop, the crop will keep the same shape or ratio unless you hold down the Shift key as you drag the crop handles. With older versions it's the other way around. Either way you'll see this pop out showing the width and height. You can set this to display millimeters, inches, pixels and so on in preferences. In this basic mode, Photoshop won't do any processing other than changing the shape of your image. While we're talking about the basic crop, it's worth showing you how you can move the area around. If you single click inside the crop area, you can drag the crop box to the area you want. Don't click outside the box or you'll actually crop the image. I'll reset the crop now by clicking the reset button up here. At the top section of this drop down we have a choice between ratio or width by height by resolution. There's a really big difference between the way these two settings work. Firstly we'll take a look at ratio. With ratio selected you can enter numbers for width and height to set the specific ratio you want. You can change the amount of the crop with the handles, but the ratio will stay locked at whatever you entered. Here I've entered 10 wide by 1 high, a long thin strip. These numbers define the ratio or the proportions of the crop rather than units like pixels or millimeters. But as you drag around the crop area, you can see the actual size of the crop displayed in the black pop out. In this case I've chosen to view the size in millimeters. You can flip the horizontal and vertical ratio with these arrows here. If you hit clear, the numbers will be removed from the boxes, but the crop preview will stay there, unless you hit either this reset arrow or the no entry style cancel button. Again, like with the basic crop, the ratio crop will simply get rid of the parts of the image you don't want. There won't be any processing of the image to resize it. I'll enter that 10:1 crop again, and this time actually do the crop. Slightly confusingly, there are at least 3 ways to make the crop tool actually do the crop, or commit in Adobe speak. You can hit the tick here, you can hit enter and then enter again, or you can simply double click on the image with the crop tool still selected. So with that 10:1 crop, we'll have a look at the image size. We can see that Photoshop has thrown away the unwanted pixels, but the DPI, the resolution, is still the same 240 pixels per inch. In other words, we've got a kind of chunk of the image at that same resolution. I'll undo the crop and go back and select width by height by resolution instead of ratio. If you go to the first box here to set the width, you can choose what units to use by right-clicking your mouse. If you haven't got a right-click on your mouse, you can use the Control key and just single-click on your mouse. I'm going to switch from inches to millimeters. I'm going to leave the resolution in pixels per inch, and do be careful here. If you mean to create a 300 dpi image, but accidentally use pixels per centimetre, your file size will be more than 6 times bigger. So we have a new width here of 1000 millimeters, but we're going to leave the height box and the resolution box without any values. If we hit the tick box to make the crop happen, then go to the image size dialog, we can see that the image size is still 61 megapixels. The width is now 1000 millimeters as you'd expect, but the resolution has now gone down to 147 dpi. Again, Photoshop hasn't done any processing or resampling to the image, but just given it a nominal width of 1000 millimeters. This really only makes a difference if you're going to print the image. You won't actually see any change on screen. Quite often it can be useful to resize images to print onto a specific paper size. If we're going to print onto, say, A2, which is 594 by 420 millimeters, and leave a nice 20mm border all round, we'll need an image width of 554 and a height of 380 millimeters. So I'll enter those dimensions into width and height. But if we leave the resolution box blank, again Photoshop won't do any processing other than to crop the image to the shape you've chosen. The crop preview will show what shape the image will be and how much image you're going to lose to fill the print. Keeping the A2 crop shape, with this landscape image you can move the image left and right to choose what part to crop out. If you hold the Shift key down while you're sliding it, the image won't move up or down. At this point you should decide whether to delete the crop pixels or not. Photoshop defaults to trashing the pixels, which is fine if you save the image as a new file with a new name. Otherwise, be aware that you can't go back on this once the image is saved. But if you uncheck the delete pixels box and make sure you save as a TIFF or a Photoshop file rather than a JPEG, you can always retrieve the pixels you delete. The widget for getting the pixels back is Reveal All in the Image menu. It'll be no surprise that the trade-off if you keep the cropped pixels is a larger file size. Just to show how the new cropped shape works, I'll go into the Print dialog, select A2 paper, and there you can see in the print preview that the image fits A2 with the 2 centimeter border we were after. So what happens if we go back to width by height by resolution, but this time with an actual value entered in the resolution box? Keeping the same width and height of 554 by 380 millimeters for our A2 print with a 2 centimeter border, this time I'm going to enter the standard print resolution of 300 dots per inch. Now if we take a look at what's happened to the image size, we can see it's increased to 84 megapixels. So Photoshop has added pixels or resampled the image, with the width going up to 6543 pixels and the height to 4488. As with resizing using the image size function, which we looked at in the previous video, there's not usually any point in resing up like this. If you print from the resed up version, you'd be hard put to see any difference in quality. But going the other way around, reducing the file size, can be really useful. The crop tool's a neat, intuitive way of doing this. If you just want to reduce the file size without cropping the image, say for online use, you don't have to enter a height or a resolution. I'll enter 3000 pixels in the width box and enact that with the tick. Now we see the image size has gone down to 16.4 megapixels. The width, the 3000 pixels we chose, and the height is down to 1909 pixels. You'll see the resolution is unchanged. This can be confusing. Surely the res should go down if we've asked Photoshop to reduce the overall number of pixels. But if I switch the units we're viewing to millimeters rather than pixels, you can see why. The physical size of the image has gone down to 317.5 millimeters width. If you made a print from the image without using the scale to fit media function, your image would print at this reduced size, but with the resolution the same. Because it's not immediately obvious how these different ways of sizing work, I really recommend that you play around, trying different values in the boxes, and then using image size to see what's happened. Just be careful you don't save your images with any changes by mistake. So, if you want to resize an image without any cropping, probably the image size function is the most straightforward. If you want to do a crop without resizing or processing the image, then the basic crop tool with no values entered for width, height or resolution is the one to use. But using the crop tool and setting size and resolution opens up a completely different way of working. It's not only a smoother, more efficient way of resizing, but it also gives you really accurate control over the final result. And of course you can choose your cropped area at the same time as you size the image. So that was a look at using the crop tool in Photoshop. But in fact for most of my own work I tend to use Lightroom, both for resizing and for cropping. So in the next video we'll be taking a look at that. Hope to see you there.